Hey everyone, and welcome to the AgeTech Connect podcast, where we dive deep with innovators, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders to figure out how technology can make the world a better place for older adults and those that care for them. In this episode, I'll be speaking with Lindsey Daugherty from Sage. Sage offers the next generation senior living's operation management system, which empowers care teams to best support the needs of their residents. With that, we will be talking all about the problems facing operators of senior living communities and how we can overcome them through technology solutions. Well, let's go ahead and get the show on the road, Lindsey. So, of course, thanks for being here. Appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Tell me a bit about your story. What got you where you are today, and what makes you passionate about working with older adults?
Yeah, that's very loaded
Yeah,
because
so we'll start right
I
off the bat strong.
let's go.
Yeah.
So I love grandmas and grandpas. It has been my
Who doesn't?
entire existence, right? Who doesn't? Since a child, I have been involved in senior living. So my grandmother came from Germany and she was a caregiver, and then my mom was a nurse in senior living. And so my whole childhood, I grew up with seniors. But not only that, I loved my grandparents with like all my heart. They were my favorite people to hang out with and definitely felt like I was an old soul. So how I got started was just being exposed to seniors, of course, grandparents first, and then through my grandmother, and then through my mother. And then guess what? I followed their path. I was a caregiver and then a nurse. And then through all that, watching the dynamics of my mom being a nurse, my grandmother being a caregiver, and myself running through those roles, I realized there was something really wrong. Not the fact that we were caring for others, but how we were caring for others. The tools that we had, the hours we were working, it just felt like something needed to change. And so really early on in my career, I decided I was going to learn all the roles and then I was going to be a part of that change. And so I went into memory care, I went into sales, I went into operations, I went into all types of operations. So startups, turnarounds, like whatever you could think of, I experienced it just so I could understand all the dynamics. And then my last role before Sage was VP of operations, but it was just imperative to me that I didn't just work in senior living to change it. I knew every ounce, the soul of it, like what drove it and all the entities in it and how they operated and what they needed. So Sage came to me like perfect timing. It was about 5 years ago when they were starting Sage, and they use me as a consultant for the product you see today. And so as I started to talk to them and I saw them walk our hallways, meet all our people, talk to our maintenance directors, talk to our caregivers, our nurses, all of our leadership, I saw that they weren't just creating something to create it, that they were weaving into everything that we did and understand the problems and then really create a solution. So they won me over. I said, "This is it. This is what was supposed to hit my path, and this is how I will impact senior living is through the tools that they've been waiting for." So that's how I am sitting in front of you today.
And it's amazing that you have that story because you really can tell the difference between a solution that was created, from a problem patient first perspective versus a solution that was created as, oh, wow, this is neat. Let's find something to do with it. Right. So you're
Right.
saying that your background and specifically Sage, it's really just creating what caregivers and operators and older adults needed. Right. Would you say that's the overall mission?
Yeah, it was the missing piece and giving care. There's so many stakeholders, and I don't think anyone could figure out how to marry all that information to deliver to each stakeholder until Sage came around. So, yeah, it was created to kinda fill the gap, create better care, and actually meet the needs of those stakeholders, and like you said, it's the residents, it's the team members, it's the families, it's even the C-suites and the operators, and it's the investors. So everybody needed connected care and not working in silos, and Sage saw that and knew that they could deliver something that could be a solution. So, yeah.
So, in the spirit of marrying everybody in the system from the ground up, correct me if I'm wrong, you recently adopted a new role at Sage as the head of operator advocacy. This is a role that we don't see a lot in the community and in the space. So, what does this mean to be the head of operator advocacy at Sage?
Yeah, it's a big one. It's so exciting. Honestly, it's a dream come true. When I was telling you my story of like growing up in senior care and wanting to make a change, The problem is you're always linked to like an enterprise or an agenda or something like that. Now, yes, I'm linked to a technology platform, but I am serving everyone. And so Sage really want it to be a solution driven platform. They want it to be a co creator and a partner and a resource. They want to be part of those they serve. And they knew that that was a passion of mine. And so, in this role, head of operator advocacy, I am doing things to inform, give resources, give a platform and a voice. So it's not just based on what Sage needs and wants, it's what the operator needs and wants.
Mhm.
And so we are reversing the role and becoming not just providing something, but serving those that we're providing for, which to me, I couldn't imagine a better role or better fit. And it's just exciting.
And when you say, just for the sake of the audience, when you say operators, you mean senior living operators, like people that run senior living facilities?
Yes, so the operator advocacy is everyone under that operator umbrella, which is anywhere from marketing, clinical, your true operator leads, your caregiver, so everything under that umbrella. Yep.
Because everybody always talks about, how do we provide care for the older adults? And that's important. But we also need somebody to care for the operators, right? To care for the caretakers, because
Yeah.
it's a hard job
Yeah.
managing those senior living facilities and providing the right care to older adults.
It's exhausting, it's stressful, it's emotional, and you're right. We're always focused on resident-centered care. Listen, we need to care for the residents. They
Of
deserve
course.
really
Yeah.
good care. That's kind of a given. But how do you deliver really good care if you don't have folks that are given the tools they need? They're not inspired, they're not encouraged, they're not trained. Like you have to pour into the people pouring into others, and that has been missed. And so, not only just giving them technology, but giving them technology that's intuitive and goes into their workflows and gives them time with the residents. All those things are imperative to be successful, gathers the right data. And then when it does gather data, it gives credit. So it gives credit to those performing the work. It can lift you up, it can give you coaching opportunities. Like it needs to be something that's seen as positive, not just something handed to someone for someone to grab data, right?
Mhm. Now, that's exactly what I want to dig into. So, I want to leverage your expertise, all your years in working in senior living facilities, and now as the head of operator advocacy, to really dig into and to take a step back and dig into what is operations management, and specifically, what are the problems that we face specifically when dealing with operations management in senior living communities? Because it can be difficult managing large organizations, but that's especially difficult when you're dealing with older adult residents. So, what are the problems in this field? What are the complications that people tend to run into?
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics when you think about just one community by itself, right? So say they have 80 residents and 100 associates. You've got all these bodies and people and souls and emotions. And so that's separate from running the business, right? So these are the people that you're invested in and caring for. So how do you actually care for them and create a business model? And that's to me what you need to try to marry, right, with something like Sage or something else, but you have to be able to empower people in one, understanding it's a business, but a business that cares for others, and so that's where a lot of the problems stem from. So to run a good business, you have to have cost control, you have to have correct levels of care, you have to have team members that are trained, that are reliable, and that are doing their roles. So how do you do that? How do you support them? How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them on budget when they're caring for humans that are ever evolving? And then you've got the other dynamic, which is the families, right?
Mhm.
What do the families need? What do they want to know? And then how do they afford senior living? Like, how do we provide those resources? So it sounds like everyone's like, "Oh, senior living must be a great business." It it's a great business if you love what you do and you have a passion for what you do, but then once you have that passion, you have to balance that with your profit. And so to me, how do you give senior living a workable, efficient tool that allows them to care for people and create a business model and profit? And that's accountability. Accountability is also a problem. Like if you're thinking of someone sitting in the C-suite and there's 50 communities under them, I just named some dynamics, right, that happen within one community. Imagine all of that added
Scaled across
on.
multiple.
Yeah. And how do you scale it? we have best practices, we have training tools, we have job descriptions, but the biggest part is connecting, right? Connecting all the people who are caring for that human. That's something I'm very passionate about because you have maintenance directors, activity directors, executive directors, wellness directors, marketing directors. They're all inside these communities.
Yeah.
And one thing they have in common is the resident, that they're all doing different parts of the puzzle and they're not all connecting around that
But
one person.
before we get into exactly how you guys are helping connect all these kind of like disparate groups, right?
Yeah.
The management team, the caretakers, the family, the residents. I want to talk about with senior living, the consequences of mismanagement can a lot of times be a lot more dire because you're dealing with older adults that are at much higher risk. So when it comes to operations management, what are the increased risks when dealing with older adults and what can happen when operations management isn't done well?
Yeah, there's a lot of risk, meaning like you could, if you don't have a diet right, if you don't have a
Mhm.
DNR status correct, if the resident wasn't checked on because you didn't have a way to track that, or if you didn't communicate a changing condition, right, to your nurse and that resident had a bad outcome. If the resident's environment wasn't monitored and there were fall risk within that area, if the resident had a med change, how do you communicate that? So there is risk after risk after risk. It's very risk averse. And so I really think it's interesting because I keep going back to needing those tools, right, to connect and communicate. Because otherwise, when a caregiver is doing a thousand things and a nurse is doing a thousand things, how simple do you think it is to miss one of those critical components?
I would
It can
imagine incredibly easy.
yeah, and they're humans, so they can change at the drop of a dime. Like, one minute, this resident, just like you or I, feeling great, and the next minute, we're dizzy and our blood pressure's dropped, and then we need assistance, right? So,
Mhm.
we have to be on top of all that, not just reacting, but being proactive.
Mhm. Because you think about if you could compare it to some other like high stakes operations management, it's like if you're running a five-star hotel, right? It
Mhm.
matters that you don't get somebody the right room service on time, or if if you schedule something wrong. But at the end of the day, that's just an angry customer. When it comes to
Right.
senior living, I mean, these could be life and death issues, right?
No, it really can. So just missing a med change, say a Coumadin, right? Someone gets put on Coumadin and they
Mhm.
fall, they could bleed out. I mean, that sounds horrible. I mean, it's just such a risk. Or they're on blood pressure meds and you were supposed to check their blood pressure before you gave it, or they're diabetic, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, they are life and death situations that we have to monitor, that we have to make sure that we're attending to, and that we're watching for symptoms or adverse effects. So, yeah, it's a lot.
And another thing that I think you touched on, but it's important to highlight, is that everybody in these communities really does have a passion for helping the older adults and making the journey of the caregivers, the older adults, the family members easier, safer, more fulfilling. It's just really that caregivers don't have the right tools a lot of times to make that happen. And that could be really frustrating for the care team when they're there on a mission. They know they're doing their best. They're just not given the tools to make the best results.
No, I mean, when I first joined Sage, I was doing some product research. So I was talking to caregivers and I
Mhm,
was showing them the tools and I was asking them, and these were folks that had recently, just going to be honest with you, I want to talk to these folks because they had recently left the industry.
oh, wow.
And I knew because they worked for me. And
Mm,
so after COVID, there were some very tired caregivers. And I thought, how cool would it be to see their reaction to what Sage offered? And so there was one that stood out, and I'll just protect her name, but I was sitting with her on she's on the other side, and I showed her the Sage tool, and she cried on the research call. And I just asked her, like, "Why are you upset?" And she said, "I don't think I would have quit if we had this tool." And I said, "Why do you say that?" And she says, "Because I get chills every time I tell the story." She said, "Because you could see me." She's like,
mm,
"You could see all the hard work I was doing. Now you compliment." I loved my people, so they always knew, like, "You are awesome." But I never had, like, the substance behind that, meaning, like, "Caregiver, you did these 3,000 things today. Like, I love you. Thank you so much for doing that." I would say, "Yeah, great job today. Hope you have a great evening." But they were tired and they needed me to acknowledge what they actually have done, not just that
mhm.
I was like, "Thank you for coming to work." I just think it's important that we realize that caregivers, with all that passion they have, They don't have the tools they need. They get burnt out. They feel unseen. They feel unrewarded. And somebody who gives their heart every single day like that, they have to walk away and we lose them. And it's sad because those are some of your best ones.
Yeah, and in a world in which caregivers are becoming harder and harder to come by, I mean, we're in a society where adults are getting older and we're not having enough young people to serve as caregivers. They're not getting paid enough. And then on top of that, you layer on burnout, where the caregivers that we do have, the people who are inclined, who are passionate, are leaving the field. I mean, that's a really catastrophic place to be for the care of our older adults.
No, it's honestly, I've been thinking about this for years, even when I was operating, is how do I keep the caregiver interested? So I would do talks at colleges, I would do talks at vocational schools to kind of make senior living a little more sexy because it's, I mean, people just imagine senior living in a way that it smells when they walk in and it's no
Mhm.
fun and people are complaining. And it's really not that, honestly. I think that's kind of a stereotype, but if you can start to connect people to their talents into senior living, if you can be more flexible, if you can add technology, if you can add more rewards or things like paying for their education or appreciating them during or paying for continuing education, paying for nursing school, whatever you can think of to motivate them beyond that in their personal life, that's how we're going to start to attract people into this caregiving role. It's not always a career role, it's a stepping
Mhm.
stone. And so how do we get people to enter there, build their resume, have someone invested in them? So we're not gonna be able just to employ people. We're gonna have to invest in people, and that's gonna be a shift.
You've been thinking about this for years. Before Sage came along, I mean, what were really your options for operations management? How was information conveyed? How was that recognition given? What were the tools at your disposal?
Yeah, so we did a lot of meetings, right? Like morning meeting, we would do shift to shift meetings. We had a lot of paper and communication of like, here's
Yeah.
your assignment, here's what you would do. And then for like employee appreciation, like we can't walk the floor all day, every day to see what's going on, right? We want to be boots to the ground. But even when you are boots to the ground in a leadership role, you're kind of just looking at a glance of what you see going on. And so a lot of the rewards we would give out or appreciation we would give out were subjective. People had said, "Oh, Betty did a great job," or this family member mentioned that she did a great job. And so I think it's very interesting because what we found is sometimes we were rewarding the wrong people, which
Mm.
was also contributing to turnover. It was just loose. I mean, I'm like, how did we operate that way without just being utterly exhausted? You're always chasing information, and that is very difficult.
So is it just the reward and recognition aspect that's difficult from the operations management side, or were there other elements that were challenging?
I mean, yeah, I go directly into that reward, but yes, I
Mhm.
mean, it's the whole communication aspect. So if assignments change, showers get missed, physician comes in, like some of that stuff didn't get communicated, it would get lost in translation, shift to shift. If you're leaving one shift and going to another, you may not have gotten full report. And so you're missing everything. Honestly, you're missing all the pieces of what's happening throughout the day and you're getting cliff notes. And you all know, like, if you read a book and you read the cliff notes, you're only getting like kind of the basic point, but you're not getting really what happens in care. It's the small, subtle things that you don't communicate that is really what's changing with that resident and can help you be proactive. We survived, we got things done, and we've cared really well for people, but
Mhm.
I think it's just people making the best out of what they had. And we know like paper's not bulletproof and it's communication and what people think are important. All perspectives are different. So it was hard, not just to recognize, but to actually communicate and care on a continuum and consistency.
So were people really using paper all the time? I know, and I work in physical therapy, we switched to electronic health records. Were any of those able to make an appreciable dent in some of the problems that you're talking about?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Mhm.
And just know there is a place for electronic health records, but
Mm.
they're static, right? So it is like an electronic record behind a computer screen and a sign in. And so who had access to that sign in? So depending on what how that corporation or that enterprise or operator ran, your nurses may had access, but usually it was your leadership, your wellness directors where they could do care plans and things like that. But your caregivers normally didn't have access. And if they did, they struggled to get into the system or have the time to sit behind a computer to enter any real information. So Up until I know now, their EHRs are trying to evolve to capture care. But again, the forum, the interface is not intuitive for a caregiver. Now, a nurse may be able to sit at a desk and do so, but just imagine giving care and running around and needing to go to a static computer. I mean, it's just like pulling out a chart and then
Yeah.
opening it and reading it. You're not getting insights. You're not getting, like the top things you need to know. It's literally the chart, it's cumbersome, and then if you need to see something on paper, you gotta print it out if you wanna read it or take it with you. So I just don't know, I think in maybe a hospital system, it works really well, even in a skilled, but if you're talking about senior living when we're in a home-like environment, it is really hard to adapt to an EHR as your workflow system. Now, can it hold information? Yes. Can you track it and print it and access it? Yes. But does it fit into workflows? No. Yeah.
Yeah, you touch on you can have all this capacity, but if people don't actually use it, it doesn't really matter. So if you have a bunch of really busy caregivers, and we've already talked about they're stretched thin, right? And in communities like this, am I really going to take the time to pull out? We call them cows in the hospitals, computers on wheels,
Yeah.
COWs, right? You pull out this big old thing, you have to sign in, and then you have to write a note about a patient. Maybe you've forgotten the kind of care that you provided. So if people can't access it easily, it's likely that they won't access it at all. Is that what you've experienced?
Yeah, and honestly, I've experienced in such a detriment that when Sage came along, they originally were like, "Oh, could we use an iPad?" I'm like, no, you should not use an iPad or a computer. Now,
Mhm.
can it be on the cloud and accessed by others, like in leadership? Yes, that's great. But think about your caregiver. Think about what they use all day. Think what's accessible to them. What's an easy interface. They're used to their cell phone. They're used to apps. They're used to very intuitive items. So if you create something that's user friendly, it's intuitive, and that carriers enjoy using, because if they do that, if you create that, you'll get the best data ever. You'll get good compliance and they'll use the tool to make their job better. And so I was pretty adamant about that. And I still in the space hear some kind of like, oh, we have a kiosk or oh, we have a computer. And I'm like, and I hate to tell operators like, how is your compliance going? Right. Because I know they know best, right, for their communities, but I've been in hundreds. I've talked to caregivers. I've watched them learn and how intuitive these cell phones are. I've seen compliance rates. And then I've also heard operators say, yeah, it's going fine with the iPad. And then I've talked to caregivers that same very day in that same community. And they're like, no, we don't use those. We don't like those. So it's like, how are we going to change if we're not honest with each other? Right. And I know
Yeah.
like these caregivers also don't want to upset their leadership sometimes, especially if they've invested money. So they may say, yeah, that works just fine.
Mhm.
And then somebody's, linked comes in and they're like, "No, we hate those." And so what I always say is like, everyone just be honest. If iPads are the way or computers are the way, like, let's make that work. But if they're not, the number one thing we want to accomplish is usability, like
Mhm.
accessibility, and we want people to feel empowered by whatever they're using, not hindered.
I wanna put a pin in how you've been advocating for operators like that, because it sounds like there's a really important skill set there of getting real world information and then using it to inform your product. So I wanna talk about how that has impacted Sage's development and y'all's approach. But before we do that, I wanna just tell me more about Sage, because we've talked about some of the issues that have historically faced the operations management, how we operate senior living communities. But what is Sage doing that's addressing all these problems like we've talked about? So the lack of recognition, the inability to document care, the inability to coordinate all the working parts. So what is Sage doing to address these?
Yeah, I'm very excited because it still gets confused in the market why we started with nurse call. They
Mhm.
started with nurse call. So I wholeheartedly believe through 28 years that nurse call is that first sign of care. That's where we first miss the mark. And so when you have a nurse call button and a resident pushes, it's not always emergent. Residents use that for, I need help to the bathroom. I need an escort. Hey, I have an appointment later. So it's really all this unplanned care that we have never documented to find the real holistic view of care. We've always used like a stagnant, like, paper, shower, bath, whatever
Mhm.
it is. So we started with nurse call, and that is to give us a true picture of care. No wonder our team members are tired. We didn't see that they spent 8 hours answering call lights that day, and that's why they didn't get into a shower. They didn't take out a
Mhm.
trash. And so we're taking some friction away here. So that's the first thing. And plus, it's reliable. There's high uptime. And so those are all the things we were struggling with. And then when somebody pushes their button, who is that person? What do they need? Well, Sage shows you that, their picture, what they need, whether they're ADLs, what are their assistant levels, what's their DNR status. Like you can see their activity. So we're starting to take all that paper and creating that into a workflow and tool that's easily accessible to these caregivers. And then what we talk about is how do we document it? Well, you go in, you do a nurse call, you answer it, and then Sage intuitively says, did any of these things happen? And you're like, click, 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 click. So you just quickly, within like 30 seconds or less, are marking everything that you did, and it's going into a database. What's that database tracking? One, your productivity.
Mhm.
To that resident care. And so behind the scenes is like a scorecard for your resident and a scorecard for your associate. But not only that, behind that, the caregiver has goals. So, hey, your goal to answer your nurse call is 10 minutes. You're at 7 minutes. Great job. Like here's all the things you've done today. And then your leader can give feedback and say, hey, Betty, I've seen you've done a great job today. Here's a gold star. This looks like you've done a lot of work, or they didn't do a great job. And they can say, hey, Betty, today's been rough. Come see me before you leave. Let's talk about it. So it's taking all those like elements of care and combining it into a tool that all users can benefit from. It's crazy how simple it is, but it was
Yeah.
unlocking that first point of care and then evolving it into their whole workflow for the day.
Also, I mean, working in the hospital, one of the most common complaints I get is people saying, "Yeah, I called the nurse and nobody showed up for 45 minutes." And that leads to downstream. People get out of bed when they shouldn't be. They have falls, they have urinary accidents, they have pressure ulcers. Like these are all severely problematic things that just come straight from nobody showed up after the nurse call. And to your point, it's if you're a nurse tech who's already stretched thin and you feel like you're not getting paid enough, you want to care for the resident, but if nobody's monitoring whether or not you're showing up in time, there's no record of that, right? Like,
Yeah.
how can, as an administrator, you keep tabs on that? And then how can you feel good about yourself when you are the one, really busting it to get to the room quickly and it's going unnoticed?
I know to me, it's like the simplest thing, right? We're fixing with this nurse call, this accountability, this transparency, this visibility that is could change all these dynamics.
Mhm.
I mean, it's amazing. And not only that, escalation. So say someone can't get to the call, right? It can escalate and you can set that up as a company. Like it escalates to my nurse, then it escalates to my leader, and then it can go all the way up to your C-suite if you wanted to. But we want the call answered. And if it doesn't get answered, guess what? We can dig in and figure out what happened, right? When it happened, how it happened, and then the other thing is like, yeah, you're getting credit. You know who's accountable. You know how long they've been in there and what they've done. But it's not to watch anyone, it's to figure it out. Like, okay, you have had a really hard day, or you've actually not performed today. And a lot of times, caregivers, when they're not performing, they either weren't trained enough,
Mhm.
you have the wrong fit, or something personally is going on. And so, wouldn't you like a heads up, like, hey, someone's not doing great today. I've noticed in the trending, and you can look, they've done great for 8 days, and then all of a sudden today they're not. And so you can take that very moment that could be an associate that didn't show up the next day and
Mhm.
address what was happening. So it's insight and eyes, it's boots to the ground. It's not subjective anymore, like it's facts. And you can take all those problems and friction points and create all these solutions and resolutions. And I think everyone's like, "Why'd you start with nurse call?" I'm like, "Well, I could go on a tangent
Mhm.
because it all
It's
starts right there."
it's really the touch point for patients to everywhere else in the organization. If they have one lifeline to say, "I need to get in contact with those people helping me," it's that nurse call button. Did you guys do anything with the actual nurse call button, or did you just put software around it?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So yes, we changed up some technology, but it does appear the same. So you still
Okay.
have the small button around your neck or your watch, but we changed up the connectivity and how it communicates so that there is some reliability there and some backup through Wi-Fi and cellular and a couple other like Bluetooth over Ethernet. Like there's some ways that we are just making sure that there's safe reliability and repeatability and scalability and all those things.
Mhm.
But overall, it is a nurse call with software around it.
Now, how have you guys scaled from that? She says you started with nurse calls. So what has that grown into at Sage?
Wow, wow, wow. So it was a nurse call with the platform for caregivers, which
Hmm.
was always there, but we have added so much like assignments and 2-hour check reminders. So when you see your assignment, there's like a color and it tells you when you're getting close to managing your 2 hours or 1 hour checks, which was things that we just start to hear from our users as like, hey, we would love to have a reminder for this or a reminder for this. So inside the app, we've created really cool tools to help folks kind of manage their day, but then we've also done observations. So, like, if we see something with a resident, we can put it into the system and it pings the nurse and it shows up on her dashboard immediately. So, notice Betty had a cough. Nurse gets an escalation that says, Betty has a cough. Please go check. And then she's got to review and take a look at that. Well,
Hmm.
wow, that's going into nursing. So, guess what? We're working on EHR integration. So, all this will flow together into one holistic view for that nurse as well. So, the caregiver will use Sage and the nurse can still use the EHR, which is what they know. And then the other part we've been working on is Sage Detect. So that is a fall
Okay.
prevention that goes into our app as well. So there's native, alerts. That way there's not going to be a separate device or a separate monitoring system. Same workflow, which I love. And just it was important for that reliability. That's going to continue to grow as well with Sage Detect is more resident patient monitoring and things like that. So you'll start to see that in our roadmap in our future. We went into skilled nursing to kind of help with that aspect. So we have adapted our nurse call for skilled nursing. We are working on Wander. Like, this is fantastic stuff for me. Like, these are all the things that come from all our clients and all the
Yeah.
things that we go are wrong. But it's not when you go past the threshold that you're alerted or the doors lock. It is when before you get to that threshold, like I'm just going to give an example 20 feet before, there'll be a warning. Betty's entering an exit door 20 feet away, and it will alarm you to go get Betty. So
Hmm.
there is so many things in our pipeline. We don't wanna overdo it, but we wanna continue to do the things you're already doing in your workflow day to be in one spot, not in, like, all different types of point solutions that don't make sense or in another device.
So dig into a few. I think you mentioned two of the new programs that y'all are implementing. Tell me a little bit more about how you're implementing those, what those involve. I know you said it was a falls prevention one, and then there was a second one about, Betty approaching the door. Like, how are these actually implemented?
Yeah, so honestly, those are newer technologies. The detect is through a camera that is using artificial intelligence as well.
Mhm.
So a lot of the monitoring is through AI. It's been trained. And so they can start to recognize if someone were to fall. You get recording around that, but you also get language like resident standing, resident now on the floor, resident reaching, resident. So you're going to get some intuitive information and monitoring. You'll be able to have a dashboard, things like that, where you can see if a resident's sleeping or resident's trying to get out of bed. You can set alerts when things seem alarming. And then Wander's brand new, so I don't have a whole ton of information on how that's coming out, but that will be launched very, very soon. And then I can definitely share that. But the whole intention on that is to use the same device that you're using for nurse call, but there will be perimeters set up for residents who may be at risk for elopement or exiting.
And with that, all these new solutions you've been adding, how have you kind of towed the balance between a sufficient amount of data, a helpful amount of data, and data overload and the feeling of micromanagement and excessive oversight? Because I
Wow.
imagine you kind of got to thread the needle there.
Yeah, you have to thread the needle, honestly. And so it's delivering the right information to the right stakeholder at the right time. And
Mhm.
so, like, your caregiver view of information is so different from like your leadership point of view or your C suite or your investor. And so, we have Sage Insights, we have a whole data team that is breaking down this data for you. They already understand with the client, like what the KPIs are, what's important that each person see, each stakeholder. And so inside the app is the insights for the caregivers. It's very kind of gamified. It's kind of
Mhm.
more on their level of what they need to be looking at. And it's geared towards each audience. So there is no overload. Now, if you want to go into the cloud, say you're a nurse or like a wellness director or a management leader and you want to get into your dashboard, you can get in. We show all the KPIs that you think are important and it all drills down. If you want to go further, you can go further, but the most important things are right there. And then say you see a resident that shows trending of 10 falls, then you can click on that resident, click on each fall, see what all the interventions were, and you can deep dive, but on the surface, it's easy and digestible.
So it's easy to talk about how all these solutions could be used and how we'd like them to be used, but how are you seeing them used and what sort of benefits are you seeing in the communities that you integrate with?
Yeah, we have a client success team who are really great at supporting all of our users at the cadence that they really want. So they do weekly calls to biweekly, monthly, whatever they lean in to where you need them. But what they can do is they can actually deliver and bring forward the information that you want to see. And so some of the things we're watching is the care plans being more accurate. So level of care variances being kind of trued up to right size care really show the true picture of residents. And I know, yes, that is a change in a monetary change, right? Because if you go up on a level of care, that's going to, bring a little bit more revenue. But I think what people need to think about is you have to right size care so you can right size staff.
Mm,
You have to have it true so that you have the right team members in place to support that care level. And so, what does that do? Better levels of care, better care, period, right? And so, we're seeing a lot of resident and team member satisfaction. We see high satisfaction in Sage. So, we see, I think right now, we're over 80% satisfaction in the use of the Sage tool, which I think is great. Like I
yeah,
think
that's amazing.
it is really amazing because if people wanna use you, you're gonna have the best
Mhm.
data. The other thing is labor optimization, which I kind of already alluded to with the levels of care, is really making sure if do I have the right team members at the right place at the right time? I'm just gonna it's the same thing as like a medication, right time, right resident, is really truing things up to meet the needs of your residents. So are you busier midday? Are you busier on the weekends and you see that your call times are longer? Like it's marrying all of these activities into care delivery to optimize it. So optimize care, optimize your staffing modules and however your PRDs, but it's really giving everyone the tool and insights to really just deliver better business and better care together. And like this is what we've been trying to do. What I was kind of alluding to in the
Yeah.
beginning is like, how do you balance the business and the care?
Mhm.
You do it with data.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you do it the right way, it's like the business goals should not be at odds with the care goals. I think a lot
No.
of people like to frame healthcare that way, where it's like, oh, there's a winner and a loser. It's either the hospital's making money and the patient's losing or vice versa. But if you get it right, they need each other, right? Both those goals should go hand in hand.
I think that's like the $1,000,000 statement, $1,000,000,000 statement. I would always tell people no money, no mission, no mission, no money. Like those can always align. And my success as an operator is because I always figured out how to make that happen.
Mhm.
It should never feel frictional. It should not feel like you're trying to make money and not give care or vice versa. And so, like with the data, that gives you the tool that you need to match the business with the care if you're doing it correctly. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It should never be push pull one or the other because it should be an equal marriage of both goals. And that's really how you get known in the senior living business. If people
Yeah.
know that you give good care and that you manage a good business, guess what happens? Like you're sustainable, you can scale, you people want to work for you.
Yeah. So it's not only, the caregivers and the patients' goals that need to align, it's the caregivers, the patients, and the technology solutions and the providers and all the consultants and everything, right? If everybody's focused on that one true mission of providing the best care in a way that's, financially sustainable, I mean, that should be the ideal, right?
It should be ideal. And I think what Sage is doing is kind of proving that. There's proof in the pudding, right? It's finding out like
Yeah.
let's give good care. Yeah.
And then how is your new role as in operator advocacy, like how are you expanding that? Because again, it seems like Sage is taking a somewhat unique position and like heavily investing in we're gonna know our operators and make sure that our solution is right for them. What's the approach that you're taking to make that vision a reality?
Yeah, so I still have like a relationship, I would say a peer-based relationship with quite a few operators. And it's because the operator never left me. Like I care
Mhm.
more. I mean, I care about Sage. I'm not saying I don't, because I feel like it is the solution and it is the future. but I care so much about the operator that I feel like I can fuel them with like, tell me what's wrong and let me help. Like, right?
Yeah.
Let me support. And then I can go to Sage and say, okay, here's the 5 things that I've seen that we are addressing. Here's some 3 tweaks that we could make. Here's some operators that need a voice in co-creating. Let's talk to them. Let's see how we can help. And so I can surface, right, these things that I know are happening or that we need to get ahead of in order to support them wholeheartedly. But not only that, I'm going to conferences, I'm speaking, I'm giving them podcasts. I'm on these podcasts. It is not about Sage, it's about them. It's about, hey, what are you working on? What's most important to you? What have you found successful? What is still challenging you? And then we have that discussion. We love bringing people to the office, showing them our tools, giving them our roadmap, kind of walking through like, does this make sense to you? Does this not make sense to you? It's just a whole different way of creating and thinking, right? It's operator centric. And it's really just letting them drive the product. And so the product just driving ahead because that sounds cool,
Do you
right?
have any like examples or case studies that you can give us for like, when something wasn't working, you went to the operator and got that, oh, duh, insight, and then changed it and made a pivot in the Sage product that really improved outcomes for everybody involved?
Wow. I mean, I feel like there's a ton of examples because we pivot quite a lot. Not that our product's not great, it really is, but there's simple things like it sounds really silly is the sound they hear, right? Like, I don't like that sound. I don't hear that sound. Let's change the sound. I think I was talking about the assignment. That was a caregiver saying, "Hey, it's too hard to find all of my people. Can we create a homepage for me? Can we create an assignment?" Even to the point of like when someone logs in, they could see all residents. They asked us to do filtering. They asked us to make the font bigger. They asked for there to be colors. I mean, we are really, really dug in. And we don't just do it based on like one opinion because that could be one human, but it's when we hear it several times, we start making the change. And then we beta test it. We don't just throw it out there. We like see,
Yeah.
does this work? Does this not work? Being able to put notes, being able to the ADLs that we put in, they contributed to. I mean, every piece of this product was caregiver user driven. Starting with me, yes, but then we just started bringing all the users in, our research participants in. And so I don't know that Sage actually they created it and built it, but it's created by the industry.
Yeah, it's almost like probably the wrong word, but almost heartwarming to hear you say that because it's like I'm gonna have to be real careful not to get on a soapbox and go on a rant here. But the amount of times I'm sure people can relate with me that you use a piece of technology and we're like, has anybody that's created this ever actually used this
Oh, yeah.
product? And it's always like the small things. You're like, why is this button here when it's so much more reasonable to have it here? Or like you said, like, why does this sound like this? It's always those small things that when they're fixed make you as a user feel heard and feel seen. And it's funny that on that note, it almost seems like what you and Sage are doing at a higher business level is the same model you use at the patient and caregiver level, right? It's getting that data, repeated feedback, and repeated change in practice, right? You
Right.
listen to the patient and you change something based off of what you listen. You listen to the patient and you change something about your care. Seems like you're doing the same thing at the level of Sage, where you're listening to the operator and then changing something based off of what they're saying, and listen to the operator and changing something based off of what you're saying. It's such
I
an
agree.
important loop that so many people, I don't know, it seems like it's so easy to miss.
It is easy to miss, and I've been on the other side of using products that I'm thinking, "What in the world? Did anybody ever ask anybody who did this role, like, if this works?" You know? And so I think our ethos at Sage is always about that loop, and why would we even try to create something if it didn't work? And I'm gonna get on a personal level here. I wouldn't be here if I didn't know they did it this way because I have been burned so many times. I was that skeptical middle. I was always upset that products were being pushed upon me that didn't work in my workflows. I didn't understand what I was doing on a daily basis. And honestly, it contributed to me not liking my job because I was forced to
Yeah.
use tools that didn't make sense. And so when I came to Sage and then that was their heartbeat as I mean, when they were interviewing me, I was more interviewing them like, "What do you do about this? What do you do about this? And how much say does the user have? And why did you create it this way? And would you change it?" You know, so we aligned in so many ways, and it was so important to me is like what I like you just said, there could be so many adverse things that could happen if we mess
Mhm.
up, right? And
Yeah.
so when technology comes into this space and they're like, "Oh, here's your nurse call." It's not plug and play. This is life safety. Like, this has to work, and people have to want to use it because if not, a resident can be hurt. Like,
Mhm.
that's a big responsibility. And
For
so
sure.
same thing when you're coming up with fall prevention, has to work. Like, and if it doesn't work, you have to fix it. And if you can't fix it and you can't make it work and it doesn't work into workflows and people aren't answering and using the data, then you need to walk away. Like in my head, I'm like,
Mhm.
I just take it personal. I feel like everything we do is supporting people who have lives in their hands. And so if you don't create and you push things on them and they make a mistake, they're going to be the ones blamed and it will be our fault.
And I feel like that should be the tagline for the podcast, "Lindsay takes it personal." That could be a title of a good
Oh, yeah.
podcast, you
I
know?
take it
Lindsay
personal.
takes it personal. Yeah, this is your mission.
Yeah.
So on that thread, we have a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, people who are trying to create technologies for senior living communities and for older adults. How would you encourage them, and what would be the advice you would give them to take this approach? Because you do see so many just widgets that were created for the sake of being created. How can they adopt your mindset a little bit better into the way that they're creating their products?
I see a lot of people coming into the space because they see it as an opportunity, and I think they need to
Mhm.
reverse that thought, right?
Yeah.
So they might want to come into the space and not just find one opportunity. Like I see people creating stuff for, family communication or people thinking through like the activity support. And they have to understand there's an ecosystem within senior living that already is fragmented and they don't need to be more siloed. So
Yeah.
when you are going in, think of yourself creating something for a connected system and how that will work together for longevity, right? So to me, it has to have some kind of API or workability around to you to plug it in somewhere else, right? Or to not be separated from other tools that they're using. It has to fix more than one problem, right? It
Mhm.
can't just be a solution to one thing. And then you need to do research around all those it impacts and understand who it impacts. So if you're creating something and you think it's for the resident, it's going to impact the family. It's going to impact the caregiver. It's going to impact the leadership. And so understanding all the stakeholders that could possibly be impacted and making sure that it's good impact.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when you do create it, that it's user friendly, that it can be used on multiple devices. I mean, you really just have to think through the flexibility of what you're creating. Otherwise, you lock people into like a one use case and fragmented information, and those typically will fail.
So imagine every entrepreneur watches this, takes your advice. And so everybody's creating great products that are highly interconnected, highly usable. Where do you see the field going in the next 5 years in the terms of using technology to help senior operations management?
Yeah, honestly, I hope that those folks that are doing that, I hope people start collaborating, right?
Mhm.
And they start kind of helping each other so that technology cannot be at war with its own self, but
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, we have to be careful because if there's kind of technology confusion, you will lose your business because people will pull back out of fear. And so the other part of coming into the space and creating these great systems and these interconnectivity and is maybe not going solo, like maybe talking through somebody else that's doing it or finding a way to interconnect with another, trusted provider. And then really kind of making sure that the ecosystem is not scary and that you're educating together. Because that's my fear is when people see this opportunity, they enter the space and then all of a sudden consumers are overwhelmed. And
Yeah.
so I would say be cautious and make sure this is what you're in the long haul for.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
what do you think are the big problems that still need technology solutions? Like, what are we not quite getting right?
I mean, everything needs technology solutions
Yeah,
in my
of course.
brain but when it comes to I mean, you've got your nurse call, you've got fall, you've got wander, those are all important aspects. But then now, how about family? Like, right? Family communication,
Mhm.
outward communication, like how do we make that happen? Safety, people, and I know AccuShield's working, I know I'm trying to name names, but they work on like safety of who comes in the building. And there are other things like scheduling that's really hard and making sure time and attendance aligns. There's a lot of scheduling tools out there, but that takes so much time of like the wellness director. Sometimes it's a whole nother FTE to schedule a scheduler. And then the training, the turnover, like the hiring, like all of this stuff needs better workflows so that we can manage as we have more demand in senior care and we are going to be hiring at a higher level. So, really like onboarding, retaining, like all these communication to families, management of services. So, like if they need transportation or doctor's visits or podiatry, therapy. So, we're always trying to manage all these things, and they're in different books or different phone numbers or different places. So somehow there has to be some kind of like workload management streamline ability. And so there's different aspects if they want to get into senior living that all of those things need help in addressing. And that's why I still feel like there's room for people to come into the space as long as they can help marry into the other tools that are happening so that we aren't
Yeah.
getting fragmented. Yeah.
So in other words, we pretty much just need help with everything.
Everything.
Yeah, everything. But it sounds like you and Sage are making great progress in tackling some of these really important issues. I know we're kind of running right up against the end of our time. So, I'm excited to hear about what you guys have been doing, and I'm excited to see what's going to come out of Sage in the future. So, Lindsay, I really appreciate you being out. I know that you and Sage are going to be at the post acute care and senior living workshop on May 27th of this year, right? With
We are.
AgeTech Connect.
Yeah.
Very nice. So if anybody listening is interested in this conversation or everything that Lindsay was talking about, and you should be, definitely link up with her at the post acute care and senior living workshop. Lindsay, where else can the people get involved with Sage? How can they learn more about you and your mission?
Yeah, definitely follow me on LinkedIn. So you'll see a lot there at Lindsey Daugherty. I also have a podcast on Foresight called Heard in the Halls, which is a very
Okay.
transparent podcast that just came out. I'm trying to give all perspectives from the caregiver all the way up to the investor. I think that we all care about the same thing, but we just see it a little differently. And I think I want to create a table and that we all can kind of have our voices at one spot. And then, of
Very
course,
cool.
sagehealth.com. That is our website. And if you Google me, you'll definitely find
There we
out where
go.
I'm at
Yeah.
or where I'm going.
And I'm sure we'll put some links to all that in the
Yeah.
description down below. Well, anyways, Lindsay, again, thank you for so much for being out, and it's been a great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much.